Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan, and if it is your first time joining, welcome. Today, we are joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Jeremy, but more importantly, today we are joined by Neel Kolhatkar, an Australian comedian, writer, and content creator known for his cultural observations, political satire, and willingness to tackle uncomfortable topics. After building a large online following through viral sketches, he has gone on to tour nationally, self-produce specials, and create a career that sits largely outside the traditional comedy mould. Neel Kolhatkar, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
We absolutely love talking to comedians because you guys are the most intelligent people we truly feel, because you're thinking about what to say in the moment, but you're also reading body language to a whole nother degree. You've said also off air that it took you the first 7 to 8 years to actually find your feet. What were you kind of feeling in those first 7 to 8 years of comedy?
It's more of a performance rather than being natural, I'd say. So when you first get on stage and try to make people laugh in a very controlled environment like that, it's so unnatural and it just feels weird. And I came from an acting background, so I just basically rehearsed a comedy set like it was a theatre performance.
Yep.
So these are the words I say, this is how I say it, and this is exactly how I think I even got to the point where this is where I take a breath. Oh. You know, it was extremely autistic. And then I slowly, as you just do it, you know, you get more comfortable and you get more natural being on stage. And now it's still a bit of an unnatural thing to do. I still get nervous. There's still, you know, I think I use that nervous energy, but get on stage now, 13 years in, and it's a little bit more natural, and I don't need to worry about when I'm breathing.
What actually goes into writing a comedy bit? Like, how long will you sit on a specific joke for, or do you draw a lot of personal experience, observations from your own life? Like, what does the actual process look like for, I guess, the non-comedians who are interested in what the craft looks like?
It differs. I don't do a lot of personal jokes. It's funny, my girlfriend's always like, I should say my fiance, we got engaged last week. Yeah,
last week?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Also, isn't it funny going from girlfriend to fiance?
Yeah.
Girlfriend is so childish.
It is.
And then fiance is like...
Girlfriend, you know?
Fiance.
Partner. And I once said that, referring to my girlfriend once, to this like 50-year-old Macedonian man.
And they're like, oh, are you gay?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, no. He's like, oh, this is what the young people say nowadays.
Everyone says the thing is, the word partner sounds more formal than girl. I just feel like a pedophile when I say my girlfriend. You know when a 55-year-old guy is like, oh, it was my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, bro, get a wife.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
I love that.
Fiance that one sounds very romantic.
It does.
Fiance.
Yeah.
And then wife just sounds...
prim and proper.
She already hates me.
Yeah.
You know, the wife, you know. But
wife.
sorry, I got sidetracked there. What were we talking? Oh yeah,
what goes into it?
So the method of writing jokes, it differs comedian to comedian. I don't integrate a lot of personal stories. I'm actually trying to integrate more personal stories into my comedy because you know, well, my fiance and a few people like, you don't talk about yourself on stage. You don't do any stories.
They want you to.
Yeah,
wow.
And most comedians do, I've realized. And yeah, that's a way to sort of personally connect with you. I don't know, I think I'm autistic or something, and I'm like, I just do ideas. But yeah, if I have something very funny happen to me, I think about, okay, how can I put this into a joke? Because a funny story is not the same as a funny joke. So the methodology is I'll come up with a premise, an idea, like this is a funny idea. This is something that I think like, you know, I was watching a Nazi documentary as you do, and I was just looking at it like, this guy's gay. This guy, so that's the premise.
But then what's the joke?
Exactly.
It, hey?
How do I get to the point where people are going to actually laugh at that? And so I'm thinking, all right, he's an artist. Let's make a joke about that. His body language is kind of gay. Let's make a joke about that, and let's ease people into the really dark stuff.
Yep.
And then that's the writing process. So you got the idea that comes first for me. Then I write the jokes. Then I try them. So then I go to open mics or smaller gigs, and I just sort of try it out and see. And usually the jokes like that, the bigger swings, they often the first few times, you know, if 2 of the 10 jokes work, you're like, all right, that's good. And then
2 of 10.
Well, you know, at least if 30 to 40% of it kind of gets laughs, and then you just got to sort of sift through it and find the rhythm of it and the timing, overdoing it maybe 10 to 20 times, and then usually by then it's a it's a fully fledged 3-minute bit.
I love hearing that part about 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, because I feel like most people hearing that would think that's a failed joke. That means that no one's laughing at me. If only 2 out of the 10 jokes are hitting, that means it's actually not good enough. But you're saying, no, you know what? 2 to 3 out of 10 is actually a good hit. It shows that there's room for maybe improvement with the timing and the delivery of it, but it means it's actually a good joke. Is
Usually,
that right?
yeah. With a risky joke like that, you'd probably think, it's going to take a while to really get to where it needs to get to. If it's a simple premise, so I mean, I don't know, what are some other ones I do that are a bit more, like I do things about different accents or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I'm going on stage and then only getting like a 20% hit rate on that, then I'm like, all right, I've got to discard this one. But yeah, the big swings, the ones that have the edgier premises, that's going to take, it's a whole process. Idea, the jokes. So when a comedian says a bit, that's usually like a series of jokes. So that's all encompassed by so the premise is Hitler was gay. That's the bit, and then the jokes within that. There's the jokes, and then you try it. So yeah.
I'd love to know, as a comedian, have you noticed that there are certain topics or certain no-go zones that have almost surprised you in the reaction that it generates from the crowd? So
it's all. I think you can explore anything, and it depends on the crowd, and it also just depends on how you explore it. You know.
Okay.
But yeah, like an audience is going to tense up and often be a bit more tentative to laugh at certain things. But I like going with edgier premises. It sort of excites me a little bit.
Was this something learnt by you through experience, or was this something like a light bulb moment you had throughout your career where you're like, I'm getting this wrong? It's about the story around the joke and how to actually make a joke of the story rather than the story itself or the bit itself. Was this something you learned through experience?
Yeah, pretty much. It's something that early on, sometimes you think, that person explored that topic, and if I just explore that, people in the audience are just going to laugh no matter what.
Wow.
And usually that's not the case. Often if a comedian's known for that, then the audience that come to see them are expecting that, so they're primed for maybe the edgier stuff. But I like to try all my jokes at a general crowd. So, and I like to go to, I was in Fitzroy in an open mic the other day, just trying jokes because I want these jokes to work. But then I'll go to, I don't know, like rural areas and try the same joke, and
It's not working.
we'll see if it can work at both. I tick it off. I'm like, this is
100%.
a great joke. So you need to find a balance between if you want to go the edgier route, still making sure that you've got enough, I guess, fault lines in there, and it's nuanced and clever enough that it can get over the line with an audience that might initially be reticent to laugh at it.
I know comedians like Andrew Schultz, before he goes out on stage, he does a lot of research as to the area that he's performing in.
He does, yeah, he's great.
That's what really warms up the crowd. Do you find that that's a common thing for comedians to do, yourself included?
Yeah, I mean, I've done suburb stuff my whole career. I'm always doing this suburb in 2 minutes or whatever. That's never going to end. Yeah, look, if you go to certain cities, particularly in Australia, you just have to mention the shit area and people laugh.
Without even having
you don't
the
have
joke.
to, you don't have to do anything. At this point in my career, I'm like, it's a bit cheap. I mean, I'll probably do it, but like,
You just got to say Craigie Burn and people start laughing.
can literally go to Melbourne and be like, "Oh, is anyone here from Frankston?" And people are like, it's such an Australian. I saw Chris Rock in Sydney a few years ago, and he was like Blacktown, and everyone just started. He just said the word, and everyone just started laughing. So something about Australians, we just love making fun of the shit area.
Yeah,
which I think because Australia's more egalitarian than some of the other countries, we can still sort of comfortably make fun of that. Whereas I think in America, if you're making fun of the hood and that, the hood in other countries is really poor, and it feels like, oh, you're just being mean at this point. But yeah, Australians, we just love that.
You've said it before as well with like your other joke about I'm dating a Greek person, and people already start laughing before you've actually delivered your joke. And I think maybe it speaks to Australia being a multicultural place primarily, but also a place where I think we're traditionally quite self-deprecating, and that's our way of generating humor originally?
Yeah, our sense of humor is pretty dry and self-deprecating. I mean, you look at the biggest comedian in Australia, Carl Barron. I think his style just epitomizes what Aussies like, which is it's very clever, but it's understated. He acts like he's the working class guy that's dumb, but he's actually, when you look at his comedy, extremely intelligent, very well rehearsed. It can be physical, but very low energy and dry and sort of understated. And I think that really epitomizes the Australian style. I'm very different to that, actually. I'm very like loud and character driven, and I probably need to be more of a dumb cunt on stage, or like a perceived dumb cunt. But that I'd say, Carl Barron is really like the apex of the Australian style.
I saw him for the first time when he was most recently here at his most recent show, and I was so taken back by how long he can go for on stage, just himself. He had, his only prop was like a guitar, and he was making a joke with the guitar and the song he was singing, whatever. But yeah, the ability to go for that long and to almost like talk back to the crowd, and that brings me to asking, like, when crowd does shout, or not necessarily heckle, but like shout out things at you, does it ever throw you off, or do you actually find that an opportunity to invite more jokes and to actually show your comedy in a way that maybe people haven't seen earlier in the skit that you're doing?
Usually, if it's just one person yelling something, they say something stupid. I've never had a crowd where someone yells something in the middle of the show and I thought, oh wow, that was funny. That was a well-crafted joke or whatever. Once, I think I was doing a show in Scotland years ago at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So it was people who didn't know me, and it was actually quite an old crowd. And at some point, I was kind of not doing that well in this show. And a guy, maybe 30 minutes in, was like, and I didn't understand what he said. But the whole crowd started laughing. And I'm like, geez, the heckler is getting the biggest laugh of the show.
Tell me the joke, man. Tell me the joke.
I didn't understand what he said. And then that got a big laugh. So it really just depends. But then, I was doing the Adelaide Fringe this year. And when you do a Fringe festival, you do like 4 weeks in a smaller venue, which I really love doing because it really helps me sort of refine the jokes. But then on some of the weeknights and that, you get some just drunk cunts in the crowd who are... They're yelling, and you try to make it fun at the start, but at a certain point, they're pretty much disrupting the performance. So in that situation, it's like, you got to kind of kick them out. But generally, if someone shouts out and it's part of the show, it can be a good way to involve the crowd and add another element.
Well, speaking of ripping into people, one of your first videos was Australia in 2 minutes, one of the ones that went viral. I remember watching that when I was 13, and I thought, this guy's the funniest person I've ever seen. I'm just curious.
13-year-olds love me.
Yes, yes. Do you reckon you could make that same Australia in 2 minutes video now and not get cancelled?
I think I could still do it today, to be honest. I think that was sort of something I did when I was younger, and the video did so well for me, and it showcased my accent ability and all of that. But I think I'd probably try to do it explore it in a different way if I did it today. Not because it was offensive or anything like that, but just because I'm trying to do things. Maybe I'd do it as a sketch, or I'd do something a little bit different. Yeah,
I think because you rip into everyone, it kind of gives you an element of grace. So people can't automatically assume that, you're ripping into one specific group and you've got your biases. It's just like you're almost epitomizing what Aussies do, which is we just rip into everyone.
Thank you. That's what I was always trying to do, because I'm like, hey, look, this is actually equal.
Yeah.
This is as equal as it gets. We're all fucked, including me. We're all fucked. So, yeah.
Ilan and I love talking about navigating uncertainties, especially in your late teens, your early 20s, not knowing maybe what the fuck you want to do, and then finding your pathway. Speaking to our audience of, a lot of those being in their 20s and navigating uncertainties, not knowing what they do want to do. Did you ever have that moment for yourself in school where you didn't really know what you wanted to do, or was comedy, creativity, filmmaking, were those always the things that you knew you wanted to do from a young age?
Yeah, I was quite lucky in a way. Pretty much from when I was 10, I said I want to be a comedian and actor. I want to be creative and I want to do this. I loved Chris Rock growing up.
Wow,
that guy, and Chris Lilly.
Yeah.
Anyone named Chris? I just love. Sacha Baron Cohen as well.
Amazing.
Those guys, what they did, I just wanted to do that. I just wanted to do character acting and stand up and get into movies. And now I look at movies, I'm like, all right, I don't want to do that. But I'd like to make my own movies.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to do that from when I was about 10. And I knew I was just always good at public speaking, and I kind of had a knack for it. I enjoyed being on stage. I don't know what that says about me. Love the attention. So I just always sort of knew that's what I wanted to do, and I didn't even go. I did uni for a little bit, but I dropped out to do this. So no, I never really had too much of a confusion. I was pretty lucky in that sense. I was just, this is my path. This is what I'm meant to do.
For again the younger comedians coming through, do you feel like they have to go down the pathway of stand-up and live shows in order to make money and make an income? Because we also did speak to Elliot Loney, incredible impressionist, and he actually said, I fucking hate stand-up, man, and impressions are my thing, and that's what I want to keep doing. And I guess you can generate skits by doing that. But I guess for you and for your advice for the younger crew coming through for comedy, do you suggest going down the pathway of live shows, or do you think it's actually quite open these days in 2026?
I think it's very open. Like, you can get brand deals and try to start up a Patreon, and that's the sort of thing that I think will actually give you, because if you get a good Patreon going or a good sort of subscriber thing going where you offer premium content or whatnot, then you sort of know, oh, this is what I'm making, and it's a much more consistent income. So I'd say actually, unless you really love stand-up, you shouldn't do it. It's a different thing. So making sketches and making online comedy content and stand-up are very different art forms. So I do both, but most people will do one. There's one that they favor, and they feel like they have to do the other one. So a lot of content people think, oh, I have to do stand-up to make money, and a lot of stand-up people think, oh, I have to do content to get people to know me.
Interesting.
And that's, like, content's probably the way to get your name out there, and stand-up, it's not necessarily the easiest way to make money, because there's a lot of people who are doing, in fact, the online comedy people that are making the most money are probably doing it through, your brand deals or, influencer marketing and that sort of stuff. So actually I would recommend, unless you really love stand-up as a specific art form, then you should probably look at making money other ways on social media, because there are so many ways to really monetize a following. But if you do like stand-up, and if you value the art form and you're okay, coming up with a really good 1 hour show, then of course go for that.
I'd love to know as well, because obviously if you sign a brand deal, you might have certain guardrails on what you can say and what you can't say, and I feel like that's almost like toxic for the comedy world, in the sense that comedy really, really does thrive on free speech. I'm curious to know, for you, how has your views of free speech evolved the longer you've been in the comedy scene?
Yeah, so I don't do even the brand would probably, most brands avoid comedians for that reason, because they sort of think, well, this chick who does makeup is going to be just talk about the makeup or whatever, rather than, oh, let's get Neel to do a sponsored content video about makeup. I think it'll be good, but I don't know if it'll be good for their brand. So already there's knowledge on both sides, like, yeah, this might not work out. How's my view of free speech? I've always been pretty, pro free speech. I guess there's the fire in a crowded theatre argument, which is like, if you yell fire in a crowded theatre and you cause harm, then there should be some, at least, civil punishment for that. But generally speaking, we've got to allow artistic freedom, and you have to fight for that sometimes, because it might not be that the government itself makes speech illegal, but if theatres don't want to book certain acts, or if brands are really avoiding certain styles, then that's a culture that's minimizing artistic freedom as well. So it's hard to actually find the balance between legislating but also allowing people to, because it's funny. I am very, if you would ask me just in a broad sense, I'm extremely pro free speech. But at the same time, if people will often say you can say this, and then people will call you racist, sexist, etc. But that's also their free speech. Finding the balance between that not completely preventing people from speaking their mind, whilst also allowing them to say those things, is actually it's a difficult thing when you get to the nitty gritty of it.
So how do you actually master that, and have any experiences throughout your comedic journey or personal life journey changed any of your beliefs that have then transferred into your comedy?
Again, yeah, I've always been pretty, I'm never trying to be offensive. People he explores these taboo topics and he's controversial. I'm not actually trying to be. I just think, isn't it funny putting two really controversial ideas together, or two potentially controversial ideas together is so, I mean, come back to the gay Hitler thing. It's like, these are two kind of these are minefields to explore, but it sort of excites me to be able to explore that. So I want a world, obviously, where I'm afforded enough freedom to be able to explore that. And that's, I suppose, sums up my views on free speech. Like, you should be able to, we should be able to question things, and we should be able to argue in good faith with people. Sure. And we shouldn't automatically take the least charitable view of someone who disagrees with us. I find that happens on both sides, where someone will have a pretty reasonable argument, and then the other person will just be like, oh, you hate all brown people, or you're just a racist. And then sometimes the other side is like, oh, you're just super woke and communist, or something like that. Like, if I do any video that maybe has a political sway to it, there's always people in the comments that are just, from both sides, taking it to this extreme that that's just not objectively true. I didn't say that. And that is not good. But again, it's a weird thing, because they have the free speech to say that. So when you actually, maybe I probably overthink it, but you know, I would like to see what you guys think about that as well, because if the government's like, yeah, we're just legislating free speech, I mean, how does that...
It's awful.
How does that look then? Because if someone says, hey, I don't like what you're saying, you shouldn't say it. That's also technically kind of their free speech. So it's a tough thing to navigate. What do you guys, how do you actually get to a point where everyone is as free to say what they want to say?
Well, it's freedom of speech, not freedom from consequences, I suppose. I think both of us, Jeremy and I, we're pretty pro-free speech. We don't believe that restricting certain forms of speech is an effective mode of, you know, progressing certain ideals in society. Because the reality is, like, resentment builds, people get angry, and people have the idea that's like, well, who are the government to tell me what I can and can't say? It's like, who are you to define what hate speech is or isn't? Or who are you to define what racism is or isn't? And I think that most of the time you're better off having two competing ideas, no matter how controversial, on the public arena, because most times the better argument will win. The argument with most facts, with the most logic, will recruit the most amount of supporters. And restricting that competition is actually terrible for society. It's like, you know, I think that's why we really, really respect comedians, because you're pretty much saying the quiet part out loud, but in your own kind of masterful way. And
in good faith, like you said, when it comes to argument's sake, it's all about the faith in which you go about doing it. I went to a Jimmy Carr concert as well this year. Yeah. And I love Jimmy, and I think he's fantastic in his delivery as well. And there were a couple of hecklers in the crowd, but he would always argue back in very much good faith. And I know you've spoken in the past about how being the comedian, being the person with the mic, you've got the power as to how you choose to navigate certain things. And I think that gives you, a power, but a beautiful power, because you can show to that person and to the wider audience as well what that good faith looks like, and what true, nice, kind arguing and conversation looks like. And again, why we love comedians, because I think you guys do it so well, and there's such a form of artistry to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very kind. I agree with you guys. Yeah, that's what it should be, and that's I think what we should be sort of aiming for.
With that being said, you made a video talking about why you don't like DEI from
Yeah.
a left-wing perspective. I'd love to know what inspired you to take on that project.
Sure. So in the arts industry, which is the industry I'm in, it's obviously a pretty left-wing industry. I think everyone can sort of guess that. The sort of people that get into creative spaces generally lean left, and there's nothing wrong with that. Great. But DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, it's a very broad term that's often just thrown around. But what it really, I guess, to steelman the argument is that society historically has privileged certain groups over others, and we need to rectify that by the best proxy we can use to rectify that is a sort of a general makeup that reflects the broader population, or at least a certain minimum requirement of race and gender and sexuality. Now,
equality points, for example, from modern education.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. You get the -1, -2, +2, whatever. In theory, that sounds good, right? It sounds like, hey, everyone should be treated fairly. I'm not against that, right? What's happened, particularly in the arts, is that if you're not white, if you haven't noticed yet, I'm not white. You're not actually judged based on competency. You're judged on how well you can articulate a story of victimhood to gatekeepers, right? So, and competency in comedy, I'll admit, it's very subjective compared to other art forms in particular. But you get ahead and you sort of get chosen for elite media representation based on how well you can relay your story of racism and victimhood to people who want to hear that. So there's a thing called the white savior, and we've all sort of, it's Melbourne basically, but
Yeah.
the people who make an identity, and obviously people want to be good people, but when you make an entire identity out of that, you often see the need to save when there isn't such need. So you're incentivized to see victimhood when there might not be victimhood, and you're basically becoming this kind of devouring mother, as Jordan Peterson says, where I don't want to ever let my child go out or because they could get hurt, and you're essentially doing that on a societal level with minorities, right? And that's actually quite damaging. It's not empowering. I would argue against it being empowering. I think that's
not
definitely
empowering.
the opposite of that.
It's like, who has the best X Factor sob story?
Basically, yes. And that's why and not only that, the reason I said it's a left-wing critique is when I use the phrase left-wing, that now is very broad and people can mean anything with that. But I'm using, I guess, the historical version of what left is, which is a sort of pro-working class, universalist class struggle. People who can generally articulate that story of victimhood the best are often people who are quite well off and who have gone to nice schools, and they've been sort of trained to write that way and to think that way. And you'll find even within people who aren't white, the ones who grew up more working class and poorer usually are the least likely to say, here's my story of trauma and here's my story of victimhood. Now, maybe that's a bad thing, but I think the incentive structure here is not ideal. I think we've all experienced some degree of hardship and trauma, and maybe some groups have more than others. But generally speaking, in a country like Australia, I don't think your hardship and your trauma should define who you are. It shouldn't define the totality of you as an individual. So I could sit there and talk about, here are the times I've felt ostracized by being brown, but I don't want that to define me. I don't want to be, and what I definitely don't want is to be judged in a hierarchy based on how well I can articulate that trauma. It's actually extraordinarily disempowering. The idea that the only way for me to get to a certain point in my career is to sit there and amplify my victimhood. I hate that. I really resent that. And that's the inspiration for that video.
Why is it amplified then by so many people, do you think?
Because they want to get ahead.
And you think Australia glorifies getting ahead through, I guess, glorifying the victimhood rather?
I don't think Australia does. I think certain industries and certain gatekeepers within certain industries do. And when I use the term gatekeeper, in the arts, there's people who might not actually be the artists, but a perfect example is someone like, I don't know, the head of comedy at a streaming service. They essentially decide which comedian gets to have a special or gets to create a show. And in America, for a long time in the 2010s, it was that same sort of initiative of like who's fitting this ideology, as well as it's not like they're bad at what they do, but you also have to tick certain boxes. And then your Shane Gillis's and your Andrew Schultz's and these people just got so big that they had no choice but let's give these guys a show, let's give these guys specials. That hasn't really happened in Australia yet.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think of Karl Stefanovic, and when he went on and did his own podcast, he got a lot of support, and I think a lot of mainstream media got quite, reluctant, or rather didn't like the support he was getting. Obviously, he was quite polarizing, but at the same time, I think everyone saw the writing on the wall that he was going to leave Channel 9's breakfast show. So, it's interesting that we're speaking about this now, because I do feel like there's almost like a build-up, like almost a cross reaction, like a reaction to what's been instilled. And I'm not sure if you see that reaction coming, or the counter-culture revolution coming in the comedy, but it seems like it's happening in other industries that have predominantly been gatekept for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of I've been in this industry quite a long time, and this has always been a tension throughout. There's always people who break the mold, if you will, and maybe go their other way and do things like Karl Stefanovic has done. And I think, look, mainstream media is just slowly collapsing. The business model is not effective with the digital landscape. So, he's probably left to right, in purely business. From a purely business perspective, you have to respect someone like Karl, and you have to respect someone like Abby Chatfield. They've both found a niche online that have appealed to their particular subset of the population and built an audience through that. So I think it's not even the future anymore, that is the present.
So how do we empower more so, rather than glorify victimhood and dwell in that space that you feel like the art space is currently in? It's great that you've spoken about it. Do you need other creators to speak more about it? What do you think is the solution to actually empowering differences?
Yeah, I think just speaking about it in a way that can also appeal to the other side, though, is a big thing. So that's why I tried to I was like, hey, read these books, not just saying, well, you're just a victim. I think that's reductive, and I think that can... Because if people do feel aggrieved and they've had hard lives. I'm not trying to deny the trauma and the emotion that comes from that. But taking that, but creating a hierarchy where if you can articulate that the best, that's how you sort of get ahead. That's the thing. I'm trying to be very specific and say that particular hierarchy is not. There's a thing in psychology, they call it that there's the prestige hierarchy and the dominance hierarchy. So
correct.
I'm actually not overly familiar with it, but let's
I think so. So yes, I'm not okay. So I'll admit I'm just the comedian, right? I'm a man on a podcast. I'm obviously going to talk outside of my realm of expertise. But I read this series of papers. I think it was a few years ago, and so where prestige hierarchy is humans sort of organizing themselves in a status-driven ladder based on how much maybe knowledge or how much skill you show at a given field. Sport is a great example of that. Well, sorry, sport actually takes into account, but I don't know, if there was a maths competition or something like that, right? That's a prestige hierarchy. Someone's going to come first and go all the way down to the end, right? The dominance hierarchy, I guess, is someone who is just, or it sort of rewards, facets of dominance and who's the strongest, who can sort of bully people the most, I guess, and get their way in that sense. And what you want to do in a good advanced society is offer as many prestige hierarchy opportunities as possible. Yeah. But this new hierarchy, it's a sort of, I don't like the term just victimhood hierarchy, but I think it sort of takes into account almost a bit of the dominance hierarchy, but more in sort of like emotional dominance. So who can extract the most empathy out of people, and that's not the same as who's the most competent.
No.
And people, particularly today, everyone's like, we got to have empathy, we need more empathy. And of course we need empathy, but we also have to temper our empathy and ensure that we're not being manipulated, because actually it's usually pretty narcissistic people. That I know that word gets thrown around like anything, but it's pretty narcissistic people that are sort of using their victimhood to gain status. And we just have to be wary and cautious of that. And the reason I'm trying to articulate again, say it's like a left-wing critique of DEI, is because I'm trying to reach the other side. I'm trying to say, hey, look, this is actually not well, depends what you mean by progressive, but I don't think it's progress to then essentially degrade a meritocracy and make it more of an aristocracy based on who can extract more of that empathy rather than who is the most competent at a particular field. And I will admit, comedy, it's very hard to judge competency because it's so subjective. I think there are still basic metrics like, I don't know, who is getting the most laughs. I think that should be a pretty strong metric of whether you're competent in the field of comedy. But I will say that it's a very, very subjective thing.
Has it personally impacted you as well?
That
in the comedy space, perhaps, not getting a gig because someone else.
For sure, it makes you mad. It makes you upset. It makes you. It ironically makes you into a victim, but then I don't want to sit in that either. I think I want to articulate that, but I don't want to sit there and be like, well, I'll just give up then. But it's frustrating because you can feel pretty ostracized. Generally, the comedy industry is pretty good. Like, I'm not totally ostracized. It's actually more the people who aren't. It's like I was saying, it's that management rung of people who then gatekeep who gets to do the TV shows and who gets to do, it's and they're not usually comedians. And they usually get those jobs just by, I don't know, doing like some sort of management degree or something, which, good on you if you do that. But I don't think they're actually well versed in what good comedy is. And it's not just me saying this, because people might be listening to this thinking this guy's just upset he didn't get the Netflix special or whatever, which, I mean, I am, but like, I would love to get that, don't get me wrong. But I think if you asked any comedian in the Australian scene, from a range of political backgrounds, from a range of class backgrounds, they'd all say the industry is not serving us. The industry is still in the 2010s where, getting on certain TV channels is still deemed higher status, and having an online following is looked down upon a little bit. And you do have to fit a certain mould generally to get some of those higher status positions, if you will. And the internet has sort of definitely broken that quite a lot. But as it's broken it, this is getting pretty inside baseball, so I hope it's interesting for the listeners. But as the internet has sort of broken that hierarchy a little bit, it's not like they've evolved. They've actually tried to maintain their thing more, and they've sort of really avoided, so Luke Kidgel is someone who's done extremely well online, right? He's absolutely crushing it. He's selling theaters. Just recently, he was on like one ABC show and given a little spot. And I thought, this is crazy. The guy should have his own TV show at this point. Yeah. Or maybe he's been offered that and he doesn't want to take it, but the disconnect is still obscene. How much having an online following in the comedy space will just not afford you opportunities in the way people think it does, and the way in America it kind of has. But at the same time, I say they've had to get so big that they can't. It's just in their financial interest. Like, why wouldn't you let Shane Gillis on a show? It's just crazy not to.
So what are your aspirations then with all of that in the context of our conversation here? Would your aspirations and your future with comedy be to stay in Australia or to shift to America, or could it be something completely different?
Yeah,
what are your aspirations?
I want to stay in Australia and make it. I want to make the Australian comedy great again. I don't know, but I'll get the hat and everything. But I thought about moving overseas, and opportunities are great there. But I love it here. It's a good place to raise a family as well. So. My fiance and I, we're pretty comfortable here. I'm gonna spend a couple of weeks to maybe 2 months in London every year. There's a great scene there.
Amazing.
And there's good opportunities there. No, I just like it here, and I still want to do things like what Chris Lilly did, what Sacha Baron Cohen did. I want to make movies. I want to do bigger projects.
Yeah.
And either I got to sort of figure out a way to fund them myself, or the industry's got to change a little bit. But in getting to that point, I still want to do great stand-up, do a good show every year, and do the clubs and make good videos and try to just I just see comedy as like a job that I want to, it's like a trade that I want to master. I want to master the craft.
I love that.
I just want to get so good at it that every video pops and every joke I do is really high level, and I just want to do that, really. Just get as good at this art form as I possibly can.
What have you learnt about yourself through your entire comedy journey?
Ooh, wow. A lot of things, man. I've sort of, I've learned about my personality a bit more. I actually, in the creative field, a lot of people are averse to structure and consistency and repetition. I actually thrive in that environment where, even though it's a sort of creative, subjective field, I like having a good structure every day. I like consistency. I like being that sort of a person, and that's sort of brought the best out of me, I think, as well. That comes to mind as the biggest lesson I've learned, and I'm pretty passionate about this. I'm ambitious. I want to get to certain points, and I want to, keep getting better and grow. And I want to embrace that while still making it funny without sounding like I'm just doing a motivational thing. I'd say those two come to mind as the biggest lessons
Amazing.
I've learned. Yeah.
Well, that's that infectious enthusiasm is infectious. I mean, it's very much enthusiasm that is infectious and transferable to anyone listening. So thank you for that. And that leads us to our final segment, which is the sweet spot. And you can see these muffins here, Neel.
Look at that.
And we very much got, I think, Mum went to another degree because Mum makes them for our guests, and she was even baking the apples which are in the muffins today. So they're apple cinnamon muffins, and they look fantastic. So you're going to get your hands on those. But we do a segment called the sweet spot. So we ask you, what is a sweet moment in your life currently? A moment that gives you the warm, fuzzy feelings. A moment that makes you feel like this is great, and oftentimes the first thing that pops up into your mind.
Well, like I told you guys, I got engaged last week, and that's a very sweet moment in my life. And I organised a nice picnic overlooking Sydney Harbour, and popped the question, and all went well. She said yes, thankfully, and she sort of, it was one of those ones where she knew it was coming. So yeah, that's something very different to the career, and it's good to have that. It's good to have, something outside of the career that makes you so happy, and that's the sweet spot for me.
Well, congratulations to the both of you.
Thank you.
That's an awesome sweet spot. I don't think we've ever had that as an answer for the sweet spot, like an engagement. So,
okay.
Awesome to hear that, mate. Before we do wrap up, where people want to find your work, what are your best handles? Where can they find you?
So if you just want my stand-up, neel.comedy, Neel.comedy on Instagram. The full Instagram page, Neel Kolhatkar, NeelKolhatkar. I wish I didn't have as long a name. It would be easier to get people to follow me. Just, if you remember Neel and then comedy, and it should come up, hopefully. I'm always doing live shows. This is just a good piece of advice for anyone who likes a particular comedian. Always try to see them when they're doing a solo show, because, like I said, I'll do gigs where there's multiple comedians, and usually I'm not getting paid as much there, but that's where I'm maybe trying stuff, and that's the same for a lot of other comedians. So if you like my stuff, if you want to see me, come see the solo show. And yeah, I'm always in the capital cities, and then I go regional every now and again. I don't always sell that well regionally, but yeah, my bread and butter is like your Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, and now I'm doing shows in London as well, so that's pretty exciting. And yeah, you can I've got an email list if you really want to come to the shows, but probably Instagram's the main social that I focus on, YouTube as well, and just follow me on socials, and that's it. Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for joining the potty.
Thank you for having me. I'm keen to try the muffin.